The forest stood alone, untouched, a fortress of twisted branches and gnarled roots. Sunlight struggled to penetrate the dense canopy, casting the forest floor in perpetual twilight. The air hung heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. It was a smell that spoke of things best left undisturbed. The trees themselves were unsettling. Their bark was a sickly pale, almost grey, and their branches twisted and contorted at unnatural angles. They seemed to reach out towards each other, their leaves intertwining to form a suffocating roof overhead. There was a palpable sense of wrongness here, a feeling that the very woods themselves were watching, waiting. This was no ordinary forest. This was a place of ancient primal fear, a place where the veil between worlds wore thin. And it was into this heart of darkness that a group of unsuspecting explorers dared to venture. The team was led by a man named Jack, a seasoned survivalist with years of experience in the world's most unforgiving environments. He'd faced scorching deserts, climbed treacherous mountains, and navigated his way through dense jungles. But nothing could have prepared him for the chilling reality of this forest. They were equipped with the latest technology, GPS trackers, high-powered flashlights, and even a portable weather station. Their backpacks were loaded with supplies, food, water, medical kits, and weapons for self-defense. They were prepared for anything the wilderness could throw at them, or so they thought. The forest welcomed them with an unsettling silence. The usual symphony of birdsong and insect chirps was absent, replaced by an unnerving quiet that seemed to press in on them from all sides. Jack felt a prickle of unease crawl up his spine. This was not right. They pressed on, their boots crunching on the bed of decaying leaves beneath their feet. The deeper they ventured, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The air grew colder, damper, and the shadows seemed to twist and writhe around them. The sun began its descent, casting long, grotesque shadows that danced and flickered amongst the trees. The silence continued, broken only by the sound of their own breathing and the crunch of leaves beneath their feet. It was a silence that screamed, a silence that spoke of hidden dangers lurking just beyond the reach of their senses. They stumbled upon a clearing, a lone weathered sign standing askew in the centre. Its paint was faded, the words barely legible. Turn back. A chill ran down Jack's spine. He recognized the tone, the silent plea echoing the warnings of countless local legends he'd scoffed at. As night fell, they made camp by a sluggish black stream that snaked through the trees like a vein of darkness. The water was strangely still, reflecting the light of their fire like a sheet of obsidian. It held no reflections, however, only the dancing flames and the encroaching darkness of the woods. The silence stretched on, a taut string of tension that vibrated with every rustle of leaves, every crack of a twig. It was the silence before a storm, a predator stalking its prey, and they were the prey. A blood-curdling howl shattered the silence, echoing through the trees. It was a sound that spoke of primal fear and untamed wilderness. It was the howl of a predator, hungry and relentless. The explorers froze, their blood turning to ice in their veins. Two glowing eyes pierced the darkness beyond the firelight. They hung there, disembodied and malevolent, watching them with an intelligence that sent shivers down their spines. Jack gripped his rifle tighter, his heart pounding in his chest. The creature emerged from the shadows, its form illuminated by the flickering firelight. It was a canine, but one unlike any they had ever seen before. Its size was monstrous, dwarfing even the largest of wolves. Its fur was black as night, its eyes burning with an eerie green fire. This was no ordinary beast. This was a creature of legend, a Dogman, It circled their camp, its movements fluid and graceful despite its size. It watched them with those intelligent eyes, its bared fangs glinting in the firelight. Fear, primal and instinctive, gripped the explorers. They were trapped, their technology useless against this creature of myth and nightmare. The Dogman lunged. It moved with a speed that defied its size, crashing into one of the explorers with bone-jarring force. A scream ripped through the night, cut short by a sickening crunch. Panic seized the group, their carefully constructed world crumbling around them. Then from the depths of the forest another horror emerged. Grotesque figures, their flesh rotting, their eyes glowing with an unholy light, shambled towards them. They moved with an unnatural grace, their limbs contorting at impossible angles, the reanimated dead, zombies. The explorers fought back with a desperate fury, their weapons blazing in the night. But the creatures kept coming, relentless in their pursuit. They were outmatched, outgunned, and surrounded. The forest itself seemed to be alive with the dead, their moans and groans echoing through the trees. This was no ordinary forest. This was a graveyard. The Dogman fought alongside them, ripping and tearing at the undead with savage ferocity. It was a terrifying ally, its every move a blur of teeth and claws, but even its strength seemed to be waning against the relentless onslaught. As the night wore on, a horrifying truth dawned upon Jack. The forest itself was conscious. He felt it in the rustling leaves, the creaking branches, the very air he breathed. It was a malevolent presence, ancient and insidious, feeding off the life that dared to enter its domain. He saw it in the trees themselves, their bark contorting into grotesque faces, their branches reaching out like grasping claws. Heard it in the whispers of the wind, the rustling of leaves, a chorus of voices chanting in an unknown tongue. The forest was not merely a collection of trees, it was a single entity, a hive mind. It was the forest that animated the dead, twisting their souls and commanding them to guard its domain. They were puppets, animated by the forest's malevolent will. And the Dogman, Jack realized with a growing sense of horror, was a prisoner of this entity, its primal instincts twisted and controlled. Each fallen explorer, each drop of blood spilled on the forest floor, only seemed to strengthen the entity. Their fear, their pain, it fed on it all. They were trapped in a nightmare, and the forest was the architect of their despair. The Dogman, wounded and exhausted, collapsed near Jack. Its chest heaved, its breaths coming in ragged gasps. The creature's eyes, once filled with feral rage, now held a flicker of something akin to despair. Jack saw in them a reflection of his own terror, but also a desperate plea. This creature, this monster, was as much a victim of the forest as they were. Its very nature was being warped, twisted, to serve the will of the entity that held them all captive. He understood then. The Dogman was not their enemy, not truly. It was a prisoner, its primal instincts twisted and controlled by the forest's malevolent will. It longed to break free, to destroy the source of its torment just as much as they did. Jack reached out, his hand trembling, and placed it on the creature's massive head. It flinched, a low growl rumbling in its chest, but it didn't pull away. In that moment, a strange understanding passed between them, a shared desperation in the face of overwhelming darkness. They were both victims, both fighting for survival against an enemy beyond comprehension. The Dogman, driven by a primal instinct to destroy the source of its torment, led them towards the heart of the forest. It was a harrowing journey, fraught with danger at every turn. The undead seemed to swarm around them, drawn to their life force like moths to a flame. They fought their way through, their weapons blazing, their bodies and spirits pushed to the brink. Jack knew they couldn't keep going like this for much longer. They were running on fumes, their ammunition dwindling, their hope fading with every passing moment. Ahead in the distance they saw it, a colossal tree, its trunk wider than a house, its branches reaching out like skeletal fingers to claw at the sky. It pulsated with an eerie green light, a beacon of malevolence in the heart of the forest. This was the source, the core of the entity that held them captive. The Dogman let out a mournful howl, a sound filled with pain and rage. This was their last stand, their only chance to break free from the forest's grasp. Jack took a deep breath, steeling himself for the impossible battle ahead. They had come too far to give up now. They had to destroy the heart of the forest, even if it meant sacrificing their own lives in the process. The air crackled with energy, the forest floor littered with the remnants of their desperate battle. The stench of death hung heavy, a gruesome testament to the price they had paid. The massive tree at the heart of the forest stood, scarred but undefeated. It pulsed with a faint, eerie green light, a constant reminder of the malevolent force that still lingered within. The Dogman was gone, vanished into the depths of the forest. Whether it had found peace or was still trapped within the entity's grasp, they couldn't say. Jack and the few remaining survivors stumbled out of the forest, forever marked by the horrors they had witnessed. The forest remained, a silent, brooding presence on the edge of their maps, a place of whispers and shadows where the dead walked and the trees watched with ancient, knowing eyes. The forest had offered them a glimpse into its heart of darkness, and in return it had claimed a part of their souls. They had survived, but the forest and its secrets would always remain.